Hello there. It is a late July day here in Seoul, afternoon. I think the temperature is around 31 degrees Celsius. It's about 88 Fahrenheit. And it's a little overcast. It was clear earlier and it was raining before that. I'm expecting more rain. I mean, you never know this time of year. We're still on the tail end of rainy season, I think. And the humidity is just killing me. I hate humidity. Hate. This is my least favorite time of year. And it's only gonna get worse in August. So right now I'm walking through Namsan Town, which is a rather large apartment complex in the neighborhood of Yaksu-dong, I believe. I cut through here sometimes when I'm going over on the other side of the big hill, Maebongsan here. Today, I thought while I'm doing Q&A, which is what I'm out here for, I thought I'd take you for a little walk through a market near Kumho Station. So we are heading that way now. But yeah, I am here for a Q&A. And the last Q&A I did was back in April, I think, the end of April. And since that time, I've had several emails with more questions. Most of them came in the 3 weeks after the last Q&A. And I was surprised that several of the questions were related. I mean, there were three distinct categories of relation there that people were asking similar questions about. That really surprised me. I just didn't expect so many similar questions to come in. And so what I've done is I've taken those similar questions and combined them into some broader, more general questions that I'll answer here. There's three of those. And then we got a few more specific questions that I will answer today. So, this Namsan Town place, like I said, it's pretty large, but I'm going to cut out of it right here. This is one of the gates. So some of the questions I received were not related to Korea or to me or life in Korea, but were about running a YouTube channel. There were some very specific questions about statistics, how to get subscribers, monetization strategy, that kind of thing. So I think more broadly, we can say, what is my advice about running a YouTube channel? And I can't give any advice about strategy or, how to get subscribers, any of that. There are plenty of channels out there where they give that kind of specific advice. But I think, in my opinion, before you start thinking about that kind of thing, before you start worrying about subscriber numbers or watch time or all of that, those are just numbers, right? And by themselves, they don't have any meaning. The meaning comes from you. You ascribe meaning to them, okay? Some people find subscriber count to be very important. Other people do not. For me, I put a high value on returning viewers because not all subscribers are going to return and watch more videos. And not all non-subscribers, people who aren't subscribed, are going to not watch your videos. There are plenty of people who aren't subscribed to a channel who watch those channels' videos sometimes when they show up on their YouTube homepage. So I think for me, returning viewers is a more meaningful metric. But that might not be the case for you. So my advice to anybody who's starting a YouTube channel or who's, recently started a YouTube channel, just getting going with it, is to understand why you have your YouTube channel. Because if you understand why, then you can answer two more important questions. What do you want your channel to become? And how do you want to get there? And those three questions, if you're honest in your answers and you really dig deep for them, those three questions will help guide you forward. That doesn't mean you're going to be successful. You know, that's not what I'm talking about here. But those three answers will help you form a vision statement for your channel that will help you make decisions about the channel, what kind of videos to publish. It'll help you decide which metrics are important to you. It'll take away indecision and uncertainty, right? All the things that, or some of the things that lead people to burn out or get stressed or give up, right? Having a clear idea of why you have a channel, what you want to do with it, and how you want to get there, it just brings a bit of confidence in what you're doing. So I of course have a vision statement for my channel. I answered all these questions for myself, and I try to adhere to it. You know, it's not something that's set in stone. Just because something doesn't align with your vision doesn't mean you should never do it. I mean, but if you're not sure if you should do something, it lets you know, okay, this aligns with my vision, I should do it. This doesn't align with my vision, I shouldn't do it. But it doesn't mean you should do everything that aligns and nothing that doesn't align, right? So just to give you an example, I'm not going to tell you what my vision statement is, but there are certain things that fall out of it, right? That it implies, that emerge. One of those things is that this channel is about Korea. It's not about me. And that's why you don't see like lifestyle vlogs from me on this channel. I don't do a week in my life or a day in my life or any of that on this channel. This is about Korea. And anything that's related to me is just in service of telling you about Korea. I want to show you Korea from my perspective, through my eyes, my experience. That's basically what I'm here for. So when I decide what kind of videos to go on this channel, I ask, okay, does this align with my vision? Does this tell people about Korea? Is it more about me? Not gonna go here. I'm not gonna publish anything like that. I'm not gonna spend time making videos that don't align with my vision for the channel, because time is a very important resource. And the more time you spend making videos that don't align with your vision, the less time you have for videos that do align with your vision. But again, it's okay to break that once in a while. So for example, I'm about 6 weeks away from a trip to the UK. It's going to be a 3-week trip. And I do intend to film some vlogs while I'm there and publish them on this channel. They completely do not align with my vision. But I think it makes sense to do them because, you know, that's going to be 3 weeks that I can't be making videos about Korea because I'm going to be there. And when I get back, I'm going to be very busy because of work. I'm going there for a conference, and there's a lot of post-conference stuff I'm going to be tied up with when I get back. I'm not going to have a lot of time to make new videos. So having that footage ready to edit when I get back, it's going to save some time. So it makes sense for me to do those videos even though they don't align with my vision. My website, that aligns with my vision, right? It's there to give you extra information. My blog, that aligns with my vision for the channel, right? All of that aligns with my vision in some way. So all of this, you know, comes from my vision. I know what I'm doing here. I know what I want. I know what my goals are. I know what I'm working toward. And I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but I do want to say one thing. When you're trying to figure out why you want to run a YouTube channel, why you want to make videos, you don't just ask yourself why and go with the first thing that comes to the top of your head, right? The first thing that pops into mind is not the answer, more than likely. That's the easy answer, right? That's the surface. That's the tip of the iceberg. You got to dig. If you really want to understand your motivations, you got to dig, okay? Why do I want to start a YouTube channel? Because I want to tell the world about Korea. Well, why do I want to tell the world about Korea? Okay? You keep asking yourself why and trying to understand what the answer is at each level until you hit a point where you can't answer. When you can't answer, now you're getting somewhere. Now you're going to have to stop and do some serious introspection and reflection and figure out, this is where you really figure out what your true motivation is. Right. So that's it. Understand why you want your YouTube channel, figure out what you want your channel to become. And I don't mean set a goal. This is not a goal. A goal has a finite endpoint. It has a measurable finish line. So you don't want that. Your vision is a direction. It's not a destination, right? So you want your vision to be something that's either impossible to achieve or really difficult to achieve, because you're just setting the direction that you're going, not the spot you're going to. Your goals are the steps along the way, right? The vision just tells you the direction. Does this goal align with my vision? Is it on the path that I want to go on, or is it somewhere else? That's it. So that was probably a little longer than I wanted to talk, but I wrote about this a little bit in a blog post, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And now let's get to some Korea questions. So the next category of questions, I actually got several in this category, basically is, do I have any advice on moving to Korea? How do I get a job in Korea? How do I get a visa, this, that? And my simple answer here is no. I'm sorry, but no. The thing is that 30 years ago, I was aware of visa laws and regulations, whatever, and I had a very easy entry into Korea, right? Because I was in the U.S. Army. And when I got out of the Army, I had the right contacts. It was very easy for me to get a job on base that allowed me to get a special visa that people working for the U.S. government have here. The military, the U.S. government and the Korean government have an agreement for the military called the Status of Forces Agreement, and it covers a lot of legal issues for U.S. soldiers, but it also allows for a special category of visas called a SOFA visa for U.S. government employees and contractors. Got the job, got the SOFA visa. I think I had to go out to the immigration office to get the visa, but once I had it, I had to renew it once a year, but it was very easy to do. I didn't even have to go out to the immigration office. They sent an immigration agent to the Yongsan garrison here in Seoul, where I was working, on a regular basis. I can't remember how often it was, twice a month, once a month, I don't remember, but he was there on a pretty regular basis. And so when you needed to renew your visa, you just waited for him to show up and you took it to him. Had a nice little chat, got it done, and quick and easy, painless. So there were times when I was on a different kind of visa, but I finally got my marriage visa in 2002. My wife and I married in '99, and I got my marriage visa in 2002. And then I applied for my permanent residency, and at the time, I had to hold on to my marriage visa for 5 years to get a permanent residency. That was the rule at the time. Today, they've changed it to 2. This I do know. Somebody told me about it, or I read about it not long ago, but it was a few years ago I heard about this. But yeah, it's 2 years now. I have no idea what it's like to try to get a job in Korea from outside of Korea. Every job I've ever had here, I've gotten from in the country. I can't tell you what the easiest path is, and I don't want to give you any advice that you then act on that turns out to be problematic. I'm not an immigration lawyer, so the best I can do, if you want advice about how to get into Korea, first thing is to go to the immigration website and look at the different types of visas that are available. There are Reddit communities out there where people who live in Korea might be able to help you with advice on getting a job, you know, and you might talk to an immigration lawyer or an immigration agency if they offer a consultation or whatever. But yeah, I'm just, because I know so little about it these days, the best I can do is, you know, Google search, which is the same thing you can do, right? So yeah, I don't have any special insights on this. I will say, however, that I recently learned that there's a digital nomad visa, and that looks pretty interesting, I think, if you qualify for it, but it does have some specific requirements. Yeah, it's not an easy process. But anyway, yeah, I'll leave some links down in the description to help you out. So now I'm in Gumho-dong and just outside Gumnam Market, which is right down this way. And it's been here since the 1940s, I believe, sometime before the Korean War anyway. And it's just a local traditional market. And you've got this area behind me, a little shopping area. It's got this very narrow sidewalk that hasn't changed since I've been here. I mean, the first time I came here 30 years ago or so, it looked pretty much the same as it does now. Now, the area around here, you know, has developed quite a bit. You see all these apartments, these high-rise apartments in the background here. But this street pretty much has the same feel that it did the first time I came here. And I think that's pretty cool. It's always interesting to walk through here. But it can also be difficult to walk through there with a camera trying to vlog because of the narrow sidewalk and all the people. So I think we should come here on the back streets to get to my next question, which is, do you have any advice on learning Korean? This was the next most common category of questions that I received, and luckily I do have something to say about this. I wish I could say that I had nothing to say about it, because that would mean that I was fluent in Korean and didn't need to study it myself. But as I've mentioned before, my Korean ability is not where you'd expect it to be given how long I've been here. And, you know, I have kind of broken grammar. My vocabulary isn't as, my vocabulary list isn't as large as it should be. And, you know, 33 years of bad habits, bad speaking habits, are hard to shake. You know, when you've been mispronouncing or something, or butchering some grammar the same way for so long, it's very difficult to overcome, even though you know it's incorrect. So yeah, I have looked at some options for learning Korean, and right now I can tell you, if you're just starting, I think there's a great little series of books called Korean Made Simple by Go Billy. I'll link to the books and Billy's YouTube channel in the description below. But yeah, the Korean Made Simple, I think it's a very great place to start, the book one there, because he starts with teaching you how to read and write Hangul, which is very important, I think. Reading especially. If you know how to read Hangul, it will make the learning experience so much easier and more effective, I think. And he has videos on his YouTube channel that kind of supplement what he has in the book. And he also has a nice introduction to some common vocabulary and basic grammar that I think if you can master what's in book one, it'll really help you out a lot on a visit to Korea. It'll make things less challenging for you. And to supplement that, I think LingoDeer, the app, the learning app, is very good. Their Korean module, I guess, is very focused on grammar, which I like. I think that's very important when you're learning a language. You know, some of the other apps I've looked at, they focus on situations and vocabulary, and they introduce grammar later on. LingoDeer puts an emphasis on the grammar very early on, and I've been using it myself to try to overcome some of my grammar deficiencies. So yeah, I can recommend the GoBilly stuff, Korean Made Simple, and LingoDeer, absolutely. And also I've heard some good things about italki, I don't know how to pronounce it, Italki. Apparently it's a website where you can subscribe to a tutor and have one-on-one sessions. So one person who emailed me said he had been using that, and so I've seen other people talking about it online. I haven't looked into it yet, so I can't tell you what I think about it, but I've heard good things about it, so I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Anybody watching this, if you have any good resources for learning Korean, please leave them in the comments so that other people looking for them can find them too. And you know, you may know something that's better than the things I've recommended. So yeah, please do. So next question, do you know what the crime rate is in Korea? So, you know, the crime rate, I had to look it up. I had to Google it. So there's a website called, I think, Statista. They had a report from 2022 that said the crime rate for that year on average was 3,051 crimes per 100,000 people. And I know Jeju was top of the list in terms of provinces with 4,000 something. Seoul, which is a special province in itself, was above average with 3,100 something. So, I mean, that's the numbers. It didn't break it down by violent crimes and nonviolent crimes or any of that. So, I mean, anything related to crime statistics, I don't have that stuff in my head. And so if you want to know something like that, just, you know, search for it, because that's what I'm going to have to do if you ask me. But what I can speak to about crime is, you know, you hear a lot of people making videos in Korea talking about how safe it is here. I have to agree with them. I've been here 33 years, and I will tell you, I have never, ever, ever felt in danger here. There has never been a time when I have gone out late at night and said, oh, I shouldn't be in this neighborhood. I mean, yeah, in Seoul, you can occasionally find a neighborhood that has a kind of a uncomfortable vibe to it, but I don't think I've ever felt in danger here. I remember back in the 90s when I decided not to go home immediately after the Army, after I left the Army, and to stay here for at least a year. My mother was a little upset about that and a little worried about it. And in her mind, you know, it's a foreign country, it's dangerous, and then you got North Korea to contend with. And I remember telling her, Mom, and understand this was in, what, 1993 maybe, no, 1994. This was in 1994 when I was leaving the Army. So I'd only been here about 3 years. And I remember telling her, Mom, I can walk around drunk at 3 a.m. in Seoul and get home okay. Can I say that about Atlanta? Can you say that about Atlanta? And I don't think you can. You know, there is no guarantee that you're going to be walking around Atlanta, Georgia, where I am from. There's no guarantee you'll be able to walk around at 3 a.m. by yourself, drunk, and get home okay. but you're pretty much guaranteed here that you're going to get home on okay, as long as you don't fall down and pass out somewhere. I have seen people passed out on the street. So, I mean, that's how safe it feels here. My wife does not feel so safe when she's out walking around late at night by herself, even when she's not drunk. And to be clear, we don't walk around at 3 a.m. drunk, generally. That's not something I do on a regular basis. It's not something I've ever done on a regular basis. I was not drunk every night back in the 90s. Yeah, I don't want to give that impression. But no, my wife doesn't feel as safe as I do. So if she were walking down the street like this, at night especially, she would not be comfortable with it. She would be a little nervous. And I think a lot of women feel that way because unfortunately here in Korea, things are a little more dangerous for women, I think. You do hear about more assaults on women. Yeah, like I said, you don't hear about murder so often, it's rare. But I think there probably is more danger for women alone at night than there would be for men. But even then, I still say it's safer than most places. Now, I have been a victim to theft myself. The first time it happened, I was living in Gangnam near Sunmyeong Station, and I had a Weber grill, which those things are not cheap here. It would have been cheap in the States, but it was a little pricey here. It's just a basic Weber grill, nothing fancy. And it was sitting on my roof. And the roof of my building, is supposed to be locked. We had a key, but apparently somebody must have left it unlocked one time because I went out there to do a barbecue once and the grill was gone. So somebody stole my grill, my Weber, from the roof of the villa where I was living. And about a year later, also in Gangnam, also near Sunmyeong Station, different villa apartment, I let my landlord borrow my bicycle. And when he finished with it, he left it in the driveway of the villa, next to where he parked his car. And when I went there to get it, it was gone. Somebody stole my bicycle. So, and that happened in Gangnam both times. I've never had anything stolen in Itaewon, where everybody thinks, all the crime happens. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't know, statistics, look them up. But overall, I've never felt in danger here. I've always felt safe here. And yeah, I just don't see Korea, and specifically even Seoul, as a dangerous place to live. Do you miss small talk from the United States? Koreans don't usually engage in small talk with strangers. Well, and this question actually came from a Korean person. And I am going to have to disagree that Koreans don't engage in small talk. It might be that Koreans don't generally engage in small talk with other Koreans, but in my experience, people will sometimes engage in small talk with me. There used to be a bar in Hanam-dong that I went to every Friday night. I kept a bottle of whiskey there, and I'd sit there and talk to the bartenders and often to the customers. There would be somebody sitting next to me, a group of guys or a solo guy with his own bottle of whiskey or whatever, and people regularly engaged in small talk with me. So I had a lot of great conversations in that bar. It was a great way to practice Korean because a lot of the conversations took place in Korean. And for other people, they wanted to practice their English with me, so they did. And even on the streets, occasionally people will approach me and want to talk. And I think I mentioned in a previous video that sometimes people want to practice their English. But in other cases, I think it might be they just genuinely want to know my opinion on certain things. And they saw an opportunity, so they asked. And, there were two elderly guys that stick out in my mind in particular. One of them, I first met him at the Han River. And I'm going to say, I never asked him his age, but I'm going to guess he was in the vicinity of 80 years old. And he had a very interesting way of speaking, a very interesting style of speaking English that I really enjoyed. And he was very eager to speak and very happy to speak with me. It was very obvious. So he approached me. My wife and I were renting bicycles. This was several years ago. And he approached me and started talking to me. And I think he was asking me about George Bush, if I remember correctly. He was a big fan of George Bush. And I encountered him several times in subsequent years. I lived in Hanamdong, and there was more rain coming. Got to protect my camera here. I was living in Hanamdong at the time, and there was a government facility where they provided free meals to seniors. And he would ride the subway to Hanamdong and go to this building. And I sometimes encountered him at the subway station or on his way to or from that building. And I remember he was always talking about how Korea took care of their seniors, free transportation on the subway and the bus and free meals and that. Now, I know that there are some struggles there, and people will disagree about how well the welfare system is for the elderly, or how good it is, I should say. But I don't know all the details, but he was pretty happy with the situation, and he was always talking about that. And then there was another guy I encountered multiple times on the subway, most frequently on lines 2 and 3. It was really odd. I ran into this guy 6 or 7 times over the space of a couple of years. And the first time I saw him, he was asking about my hat. I had a hat that he said looked like a Civil War hat, which I don't think it did, but that was an icebreaker for him. And we started talking about that. And then sometime later, I ran into him again, and then later again, and he always remembered me, and I always remembered him, and we would just talk about something new each time. So generally, though, I'm not much for small talk. I don't particularly enjoy small talk. Depends on my mood. So I can't say I miss small talk. I just it's not something I care much about. Let's put it that way. But I think that when it comes to foreigners, I think Koreans who aren't shy, the ones who aren't shy, are okay with engaging in small talk. All right, last question, and the most difficult to answer. How do you cope with potentially not being able to see your family back in the US and the inevitable fact that your family just grows older and you aren't there for them? Have you ever struggled with this? Yes, I have struggled with it. I still struggle with it. This is something every expat has to deal with. If you're staying abroad long term, you're going to have to deal with it. Even if you're, staying in your country, just somewhere else, like especially in America, it's so big. I grew up in Atlanta. If I moved to the West Coast, it'd be the same thing, right? I wouldn't be able to see everybody as often as I would like to. It's more extreme being abroad, halfway around the world, here in Korea. But I know guys here who haven't seen their parents in over 10 years, and I know guys here who go home every year. To answer the question of how to cope with it, I don't know if this is going to work for everybody, but it worked for me. And that is, you have to have the conversation. You have to talk to the people you left behind. You have to make them understand why you've decided to live so far away. And you have to hear them, you have to understand how that impacts them. But once you have this conversation, then you should be in a better position for both sides to accept the situation. Because, in practical terms, whatever your life is like now as an expat, there's no guarantee it would have been either better or worse for you to stay around your loved ones. If you think of this just in terms of the emotional connection, the sentiment, that ignores the reality that you may be better off where you are now. And I think everybody would want you to be better off, yeah? And I think that has to be part of the conversation. And in my case, nobody knows for certain, but I have a pretty strong feeling, and I think my family does too, that I'm much better off having spent the last 30 years here than I would have been had I stayed in the States. And I think we can all appreciate that outcome. But have the conversation. And hopefully that will lead to a decrease of the guilt and the pain of missing them that you feel. And it'll make it easier on them too, if they understand why you're there, that you're not running away from them, that you really think that you're better off where you are, that this is the best decision. Because face it, people who love you want you to have a good life. They want you to have beneficial decisions. They don't want you to make mistakes. And there is a tendency to see living abroad as a mistake for people who want you to stay close to home. But have that conversation. Get it all out in the open. Clear the air, and it'll be easier on both sides. So I had that conversation. Everything worked out. And my mother told me, you have to live your life. And she understands that. And she wants me to be happy, and she wants me to have a good life. Right now, I'm happy, and I have a pretty darn good life, and a pretty darn good wife too. So, in the end, that's what matters. Now, I do miss my family a lot, and I look forward to the next time I get to see them. Every time I go home, my mother and I, we have this very, very, very tight hug when I first arrive. And then the last hug before I leave, I didn't realize my mother was that strong. But while I'm there, it's like I never left. Sure, there's a lot of catching up to do. Things have always changed, but it still feels like I never left. So that's the best advice I can give. Talk about it. Talk about it. Understand your loved ones and make sure they understand you. All right, so that's all for now. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer in a Q&A video, please email me, Q&A@mikefromkorea.com. I may or may not include it in a video, but I will always email you with an answer. Check your spam folder if you don't hear from me in 2 or 3 days. Because I will always try to email you at least within 3 days of receiving your email. And if you don't want to email me and you want to have a question in a Q&A video, just ask the question in the comments and put a little Q&A in front of it so that I know that you want me to include it in the video. Otherwise, it'll just be a question in the comments. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.